everybody, good morning. This is Jean here, Jean True Love from True Love Quilts for You. As you can see, I have worked a little bit on my Jean's Block Party, my medallion quilt. But first of all, I just wanted to thank you all. A couple weeks ago, as you know, one of my last videos I put up, I had fallen and I really hurt myself. I'm getting much better. The things that I've been doing is helping a lot. I'm taking it easy. First time yesterday I came into my sewing room. Just been pottering around and really taking it easy. I just wanted to thank you all so very much for all your well wishes. As we get older, we don't bounce back as well as we used to. But I am getting better, and I feel resting, and my body is healing. I'm very in touch with my body. We do everything homeopathically, not quite organically, but we really do look after ourselves, my husband and I and our children. We eat well. We take our supplements, very important as we get older. So I am healing. I really do, again, appreciate all your kindness and all of your lovely comments for me to get better, which I am. I haven't fully yet recovered, but I am really taking it easy. I just wanted to assure you and thank you. This tutorial to follow is me working on my quilt here. As you can see, I have put on the side panels or the side borders, my 9 patches which go around. I haven't done the top and the bottom yet, and the top and the bottom will incorporate my 4 applique corners. I haven't done that yet. That's for the next video to come, but this is showing you how I did the measurements. I don't have it written down, so you have to watch the video in full, because I do explain it in depth, but I didn't write it down. But my sashing and my borders, the measurements are there. This is what I've come up with. I did decide to use a gray and white little cornerstone instead of my black and white dot. I used the gray. I wanted to bring the gray out a bit. The beauty of a medallion quilt is the fact that it is square and it's the same on all 4 sides. So these 2 sides will be down here, and then the 12.5-inch block, which I have to flesh out with some more sashing to make it fit, because we use the sashing. It's all the same. As this quilt excuse me, stands here, it is 60 inches wide. When I add the bottom border and the top border, it will be 60 inches square. Then I will be doing, for me, you can make a 60-inch wide quilt, a 60-inch square quilt if you wanted. Be done with it. And this is what it looks like, just for a small throw or back of the sofa. But I will be putting another small border around, and then our flying geese. And I figured out we are probably going to be needing a few more flying geese than the 28 I made. Again, math, I don't know. So I think we're going to be needing a little bit more flying geese. But when we get to that point, I will be showing you. This is how far I've gotten so far on my medallion quilt. As I said, it's exactly the same measurements, side to side, front to top. So you're going to end up, again, I don't know what size, 90, 92, 96 inches square. I don't know. However big it ends up. Maybe smaller, maybe larger. But this is how far I've gotten along. Yeah, I'm going to just take a rest now again. I'm taking it easy. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your patience. And I've really enjoyed making this. So I hope you are enjoying following. I'd love to know how many of you are actually doing this, or how many of you are actually doing a sampler block, a sampler quilt in a traditional method. Whatever, because this is a sampler quilt, but a little bit unusual. But hopefully you beginners, if you are following along, have done it. I hope I've explained it step by step. So I'm going to put the tutorial up now. Again, I thank you very much. I'm on my road to healing, and yeah, I'll continue to take it steady. All right, folks, thank you so much. Love from the True Loves. See ya. I am not given written directions or instructions or measurements, but I tell you exactly what I've cut, so it looks a little bit like my pattern that was in my head. Block Party 2021. This is my idea, my pattern. If you're new, there's a playlist on my channel that you can see what I've done so far, all of the in-depth tutorials on the blocks. This is a recap. We're about halfway through, maybe a little bit more, and now I'm going to be putting my blocks together. What I have done is I have deconstructed what was up on my design board. I'll take a video. I've had a video of it, and everything was just pinned. I've taken everything off, and I've come back to my original idea, my pattern, and we have so far, we've done our Dresden plate, we've done our 16 9 patches, we've done several, 8 or 9 or 10, several sampler blocks with full tutorials on them. We've done 4 my applique, 12 and a half inch blocks, my applique, and then we have done flying geese. I was loosely basing this on doing 28 flying geese on each side. I may need more, I may need less, because this time what I'm going to be doing is I've deconstructed it, and I will show you that in a second, because I'm going to be making borders here and sashings here, and I have to now figure that out before we put borders here and then attach our flying geese. So what I have done is as I said, I've taken it apart. Excuse the shadows of my camera. And there is my, just laid on my table here, there's my 24.5 inch unfinished, 24.5 inch from raw edge to raw edge Dresden plate block. That's my 24.5 inch Dresden plate in the center. Full tutorial on how to make that. I blanket stitched it, and I blanket stitched the circle. I could have actually shown you how to do an interfacing on that, or do a lining on this one, but instead I just did the blanket stitch, a raw edge. I have then my 16 6.5 inch unfinished 9 patches, and for me I've done them gray and white, black and white dot. There's 8 of these and there's 8 of them. I have done my sampler blocks, okay? This is how we started out. I have done my sampler blocks. As you can see, I've actually labeled them block 10. I've labeled these as we went along, block 6. I haven't taken them off, the tags. And these are one single 6.5 inch square unfinished blocks with, I've done full tutorials on these, again, on my playlist. I have 16 of them. Now, I didn't do 16 tutorials. If you remember, I fleshed out my 6.5 inch square samplers with these 4 patches around the side. I'll show you, because I've only done 10 tutorials. I believe it was 10 or 11. 10 tutorials on these sampler blocks here. They're all different, but I did 2 flying geese, and then I just added a couple of 4 patches in there. So now I have, at this point, I have 16 sampler blocks. Now my 12.5 inch, what I've made for the corners here, to change it up from the 6.5 inch, I have my 12.5 inch square, unfinished from edge to edge, applique blocks. I have 4 of these that I've done. And again, I showed you in that full tutorial that you didn't have to do the applique. You could have done another, you could have done maybe just a simple 4 patch. You could have done another applique. You could have done another sampler block from my 2018 block party. But again, that's in the full tutorial. And then the last video I've done is I was showing you how I was going to be making my flying geese. Unfinished, 4.5 inches by 2.5 inches. Again, I don't know how many I'm going to be needing. I may need more, I may need less, but on my, I've set it out here, I have 4 columns. There's 28 flying geese. I have made 28 flying geese that I will be sewing together, again, to be going around my medallion as it builds, as it grows, my flying geese. I did actually make a few more. That was either a mistake or whatever. I just kept going. But I made a few more. Again, I may not need all of them. I may need more. So these are the components now of my deconstructed quilt. And we need to start putting my medallion quilt together. The beauty of a medallion quilt is that every side is the same. It's all symmetrical. You begin with a center block. You work your way out. You work your way out, and it should hopefully be the exact same measurements on all four sides. I'm going to start building my quilt from my Dresden plate on out. And everything is going to be equal sizes, like I just mentioned. Now, I had just sort of sliced off these black and white stripe borders, and they all measured, having just trimmed them up slightly, 3 inches. So my borders for my Dresden plate are going to be cut 3 inches. I'm going to cut 1, 2, 3, 4. The width of the fabric. I'm going to be cutting this down to the 24.5 inches. These two here, one on this side and one on the other side. Now, I'm going to sew them onto the 2 sides of my fabric here. Now, what I am going to do is I'm going to use, let me just put this up here. I'm going to be putting on a little cornerstone up here, once that's put on, of my gray and white dot. I'm going to be bringing in... So I've attached my 2 side borders, and my quilt now measures across from border to border over here, from this border over to this border, unfinished. It's 29.5 inches, okay? So what I've done now is I have my bottom border to be put on my Dresden plate here. And again, this is 3 inches, and I cut a 3-inch by 3-inch cornerstone here, right there. So what I've done is I've cut this border, this black and white border here, 24.5 inches, and I've attached my 3-inch by 3-inch cornerstone, okay? And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do that top and bottom, and as you can see, I have my 3-inch and my 24.5 inch border. I'm taking in the consideration my 1/4 inch here, okay? So it matches up. We're going to be matching that seam there with that seam there. And the same exact thing here. We're going to be matching this seam here with that seam there. I'm going to do that on the top. The next step is just like we worked with one side of our border and then did the other side of our Dresden plate. We're building out, and according to my pattern, if you see, we are going to now be working with the 9 patches and our sampler blocks. I have 16 9 patches and I have 16 sampler blocks, okay? And they are separated by sashing. I'll figure out how wide I want my sashing, probably only just 1 inch or so. There is a way that you can sash each block, but that's, I'm not going to be doing it this way. I am going to be doing a long bit of sashing and then individual pieces of sashing in here. The way when you can sash each block and just make it bigger, like I thought I was going to do, but I'm not going to do it that way this time, to sort of self-sash each block on one side and the other, is maybe when you're putting it together more of a traditional setting, just block after block after block. Right now, I'm working on this side, the right side of my pattern, my 4 9 patch over here, and my 4 sampler blocks, whatever I choose, and the sashing. Now I'm going to figure out what size sashing to put on the vertical and on the horizontal. And then we're going to be making that unit, but then up here we're going to be attaching our 12-inch blocks, sort of creating that top row, just like I did the cornerstone up here. So if you can imagine, this is my right side with the 2 sets of 6.5 inch, and then up here on this top row, when we go to construct it, will be my 12.5-inch applique. But when we come to that, I will figure out how I'm going to sash that also. But for now, I'm going to figure out the sashing for this unit here. What I've done now is not very conventional, but again, this is how I'm going to figure this out. What I've done is I have cut out about 15 or 16, or however many, 1.5-inch wide by 6.5-inch long sashing, okay? Now, as you can see, I'm just going to be needing 3 on each side of my 9 patches that are going around the first border of my quilt, okay? I have cut these 1.5 by 6.5 inches. So, starting at the top, down to the bottom for the 4th one, I'm going to be 1/4 of an inch sewing my 1.5 by 6.5 inch sashing strip. I'm just going to be doing one side right now. I'm going to measure it. Hopefully it'll be okay, and I'll show you my next step, how I'm going to do this. Because I might have to just have a little tiny bit up here at the top and a little bit down here at the bottom, but I want this to be the exact same. This is how I jiggery-pokery it without doing math. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sew this strip together right here, and then I'm going to figure it out to the side of my border over here. So as you can see, I've sewn my 1.5 inch by 6.5 inch, the size of my blocks, to 1, 2, 3 of my, for my blocks, I've just used 3 pieces of sashing, and that's on my inner part of this one with my 9 patches. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to choose 4 of my sampler blocks. Okay, and I'm going to put them together the exact same way that I've just put together my this in here. I'm going to do this exactly the same way. Okay, I'm going to just lay out 4 blocks here that I quite like, and then I'm going to put them together. Let me just see which ones I want. Put that one there, and I think I'll have this one here. So there's my 4 sampler blocks that I want on this side of my quilt. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing with my 1.5 inch pieces. I'm going to sew 3 strips in. 1, 2, 3. So I have put the sashing in between my second row on this side of my quilt here. These pieces, these units here measure 27.5 inches from top down to bottom. Okay? These are 27.5 inches. So now what I've done is I've cut out 3 strips 1.5 inches wide by 27.5 inches long. And I'm going to very carefully pin this on all sides. I'm going to pin it here, I'm going to pin it in the middle, and I'm going to pin it over here. My 27.5 inch by 1.5 inch wide strip. Now, I have to, we have about maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches or so. I don't mind that little joggle. It doesn't have to coincide with the cornerstone here. Because I'm going to be putting another piece of white strip up here. Probably a little bit wider, probably a little bit narrower. I'm not quite sure when I get to that point. This is how I do it. Again, I do it this way because I can't, because of the math, trying to figure out or trying to cut all the sashing strips and make them fit. Whereas I can make them fit as I go along, and my quilt is growing. I will make this unit here, and then I can do 4 exact units. Once I finish this with the top and the bottom, I'm going to sew that on the side of my quilt there, on one side, and then I'm going to do the other side, and then we'll work from there. Excuse me. As you see, I've sewn my 9 patches together with the 1 sashing strip down the side and the 1 sashing strip down the middle. Now, a trick that I use, even though I've cut this 27.5, this is my next block, my next unit to go on, my sampler blocks, okay, to make this unit. sometimes you think, okay, well, that's perfectly 27.5, and that's perfectly 27.5 down there, okay? You just stitch that down. Well, it's very easy to get your sashings that need to go right across from each other a little bit skewed. And at the final result is just a little bit not nice. So you want to make sure, even though we've done it pretty good, and it probably would be okay, that what we're going to do is I'm going to lay my pretty side onto the top of my sashing here, okay? And I'm going to match up. I'm going to just make sure right there that my sashing here, my sashing there, just line up beautifully. And then I'm going to just put that over, and I am going to pin it. I'm going to pin it right there on both sides. Now, I know a lot of you use pins anyway. I don't, as you know. I don't use pins. But in this instance, I am going to, because you will find this could shift a little bit. I'm going to come down here, and that's just slightly up. So I'm just going to ease that, making it nice and straight. This one here, this piece of sashing with that sashing over there. I'm just going to flop that over, and I know that when it's sewn, is going to match up really nice. Just take an extra moment to do this. Might even have to want to ease it, because what have I always said? Cotton stretches. Even a little bit of a minuscule part on this step, it could just look a little bit sloppy. So now I'm going to come down here. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to just stretch that little bit. There's that sashing that matches up perfectly right there. And I'm just going to pin it into place. Like that. And again, had to stretch that slightly. And then this goes right down to the end beautifully. So I probably wouldn't have had to, because I cut this really well, but just to make sure that your sashing ends up, well, you can't see it now if I do that because the pins are going this way. But when I sew that, my sashing strips will be really nice and straight. I've just finished matching my sashing, and as you can see, just taking that extra little time just to match these bits right here, even though you've cut it really well, just makes for like really a nice sashing going right across. Your eye would see that if it joggled your sashing. Now again, we're working with a smaller unit, okay, from top to bottom. If you were going to be doing a long piece of sashing, there is yet another way that, as I was saying before, you could self-sash these blocks. But for just the 4 blocks, I was okay with this, doing it this way, having the long vertical on the sides there, and in the middle and each side. Now, as you can see, I've ironed this. I've pressed it really well. Now my seams, I did set my seams. My seams are going into the inside. Okay, I have pressed these seams. I pressed these to the outside because it was a small amount. But my long seams, I just felt that's where my fabric wanted to go. Okay, my sashing just wanted to go that way. It is to the light, but I'm okay with that because it's a long bit of fabric there, and that seam is going inside. But I did set my seams, and it's really lovely. And as you can see, I'm using I have my pinwheel block here. Remember the 1/4 inch seam? Just one hair out that and one hair out here. But with our 1/4 inch seam on our pinwheel blocks that have these, or our flying geese, you can see that they're taken up, and we have nice points. Just a little thing. These were my beginning ones that are square, but with our points, I didn't cut off any points. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over, and I believe it is just 1.5 inches here. That's awesome. I could just cut strips. I believe it's 1.5 inches here and 1.5 inches at the bottom, but I'll go measure that. So, would you look at that? I got it right. I sewed a 1.5 inch strip on the bottom of my unit here that I had sashed, and I put on the borders. And it's exactly, let me just measure. So my quilt sides measure, my quilt square measures 29.5 inches square, okay? My borders here are 29.5 inches, exactly. over here. So I'm working with a unit that's 29.5 by 15.5. Okay, so you're going to be cutting your 1.5 inch bottom strips 1.5 by 15.5 to go along this from this end to that end. So hopefully you've gotten that. You might have to watch this. Again, I'm not going to be putting up specifics. You're going to have to watch the tutorial because as we go along, I'm putting it together. But all of the work is done for both sides now. And it will be for this part of the top, this part, because then I'm going to be putting my appliques up here. Now I'm probably going to, I have to sash my appliques because they're bigger. My appliques are only 12.5 inches, and this is a 15.5 inch. So I'll get to that when I get to it. But right now, I'm going to do my other side, my 4 patches, and then my sampler blocks on the other side of my quilt here. Here is my sampler quilt so far. You've just seen me construct the side borders, or the side inner border, my 9 patches and my sampler blocks. And I've attached it now to my quilt Dresden plate, my bordered Dresden plate. And again, these were cut 1.5 inches. Now I'm going to copy the exact thing I've done on this side, and I'm going to copy that on this side. I've just laid these out like I want them. Now again, you might remember that I actually had, I'll come over here and we start to go slowly. I had done a white and a gray. White and a gray. So I want to make sure to have them go around nice and neatly. I'm wanting to have a gray, white, gray, white, gray, white, gray, white, gray, white, gray, white, gray. Okay? So that's how I figured out my 16/9 patches when I made them. I'm going to finish it now. These 2 sides, it's enough for this video. I'm tired. I'm going to be putting my white in half. You can see how my white sashing just pops. Look at that. My blocks, you can see the sampler blocks. We are just putting the blocks together, and oh, look how lovely that is. My quilt, roughly from this side over to this side, once I have all the sashings on, measures roughly 60 inches. So it will measure roughly a 60-inch square at this point. Okay, that's a 60-inch square at this point. We then are going to be putting on our we're going to be putting our flying geese on here. Yeah, that's right. We're going to be putting our flying geese on there, but I'm going to stop it right now. This is all as far as I've gotten. I will put this up on the design board in the beginning, and so you will have seen it. So this is the sort of an in-depth tutorial, but not. I hope you've made notations of the sizes, 3-inch, and then 3 by 3s, and 1.5 inches. I think you'll figure it out. I like to figure out things as I go along, as I say this way, and again, because I'm just making this up myself, I've had to sort of make it fit, but it fits. I'm so pleased about it. So I hope you are enjoying the process. If you're following along with me doing this quilt, it's so pretty. All right, folks, thanks so very much, and I'll check back in on you later. We're going to finish up, or we're going to keep working on our medallion quilt. All right, love from the True Loves. Bye. So just a P.S. I'm working on the other side, and as you can see, I've just laid my tape down, not pinned anything. But these units here measure 27.5 inches. Okay? 27.5 inches. So you're cutting your sashings, your 3 outer sashings, 2 outer sashings, and your inner sashing, 27.5 by 1.5. These were cut 1.5 by 6.5. 1.5 by 6.5. Oh, look at my lovely point. Yeah, worked out well. So again, I didn't write anything down, but there are some of the measurements, and then your 1.5 up here to fill it out. Yeah, it's working out well.